right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Multnomah Arts Center. Let's give it up for the Multnomah Arts Center. Start off with a round of applause. Why not? We are thrilled to host you here tonight. This is the Arts Talk for District 4. This is the fourth of four that are happening, that have been happening around the city. We've had one at East Portland Community Center, Interstate Firehouse Cultural Center, IFCC, and Mount Scott Community Center. And we are live streaming tonight. So for folks that are watching the live stream, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Jed Arkley. I will be your MC for the evening, and I'm also an event producer for Portland Parks and Recreation's Summer Free-for-All program. If you're not familiar with the Summer Free-for-All program, we partner with community groups, nonprofits, neighborhood associations, produce about 50 events, free events every summer, concerts, movies, cultural events, theater, dance, the East Portland Summer Arts Festival, the Washington Park Summer Festival. So so we do some great work there, some free stuff. A little plug for Summer Free for All, but that's my role here with the city. In tonight's event, we're going to be featuring a presentation from the City Arts program, followed by a Q&A centered around the future of arts in our vibrant city. We also will be breaking into small groups for focused dialogue about monuments, arts education, and the transition of the city's grants administration process. So start thinking of your questions you're going to ask both. You'll have a chance to ask individually. You'll have a chance to talk in small groups. But to begin with, this is an arts talk, so we're going to have some art. So what do you guys think about that? Let's give a little round of applause for that ahead of time. Yay for art, just in general. All right, so we have a fantastic group. We've worked with them with Summer Free for All a couple years ago there at Washington Park Summer Festival, did an amazing performance, brought tears to everybody's eyes and smiles to everyone's faces, you know, the kind of happy crying. So this is Espacio Flamenco. So Espacio Flamenco is a space where flamenco music, dance, and culture can be experienced, learned, and refined. They provide flamenco classes, performances, and special events that encourage individual expression, as well as collaboration and exchange among artists. Most importantly, Espacio Flamenco creates community through flamenco. So help me welcome Espacio Flamenco.
Thank you. paro cielo. Qué maravilla, niña, qué maravilla. Que a ese perro le gusta la cañaía. ¡Ole! Y aunque pongan ahí en tu puerta, hay cañones de arterilla. Y aunque pongan ahí en tu puerta, yo tengo que pasar por ello, aunque me cueste la vía. Yo tengo que pasar por ello, aunque me cueste la vía. Cuando te vengas conmigo, ¿a dónde te voy a llevar? A darte paseíto por la muralla real, por la muralla real, por la muralla real. Cuando te vengas conmigo, ¿a dónde te voy a llevar? ¡Vamos! Asa, toma. Ale. toma pa' que te la coma. Te traigo aceitunas partidas, mi niña. Ay, esa toma del barrio de Cádiz. Ay, esa toma que del barrio de Villa. ¡Ole! Me encontré con un gitano con el pelo negro erizado. Me dijo que era romano y de él me he enamorado. Ay, esa toma y que toma y que toma. Tú eres romano y vienes de Roma. Si viene de Roma yo vengo también. Si viene de Cádiz yo soy de Jerez. ¡Ole! ¡Sa! Thank you, gracias. Gracias.
Hello, hello. There we are. Y'all are amazing. Oh, man, they're so beautiful every time they perform. All right. Well, now that we're in the mood here for our arts talk, I would like to introduce a key figure in our city's cultural landscape. Commissioner Dan Ryan has been a passionate advocate for the arts, understanding its profound impact on community building and engagement. So, please join me in welcoming Commissioner Dan Ryan.
Thank you so much, Jed, and it's so good to see everyone here. I always wish I could control everything, right? So it's like there's too many chairs, but this is actually a really good turnout. So thanks for being here. It's the 4th Arts Talks in this series. It's the final one, and we've been having a great time. I'm curious, because I've seen a few faces before. How many of you attended some other Arts Talks over the last month? All right, it's you. Yeah, this is your 4th one, right? Right. There's got to be a special prize for you when it comes to that. That's Oregon Film Festival, to give you a plug. Did I get it right? Portland. I just tried to make it bigger. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So it's good to see you. It's great to have it. We've started each one off with a performance. And again, we did it tonight. So let's hear it again for Espacio Flamenco. Yay. All right, so is everyone ready to talk about art, music, dance, theater, fashion, crafts, you name it, right? Are y'all ready to talk about that? Yeah, there you go. And so we're gonna start off with the big room. There'll be a panel later, and then we'll break into 4 groups. And I really want you to break into the 4 groups, and I also really want you to come back for the debrief at the end. It's helpful, because when we, oh, by the way, my name is Dan Ryan. I oversee Vibrant Communities. It's the work area for the city that we've just been creating. It's a work area about our neighborhoods, our parks, our arts. We must stop the population decline in our city. And also we need elders to age in place in Portland. And it's our neighborhoods, it's our parks, it's our arts that really feed our soul, that make us want to live in Portland. Isn't that true? Good. All right, so that's why we're focusing on this area as an enterprise of the new form of government. And basically, as the last commissioner in charge of such a thing, because that's going away, I'm really doing all I can between now and the end of next year to make sure that arts has a prominent place in the new org chart. So thanks for being a part of that. I assume that you're all arts advocates and activists, and you want to make sure that we finally move arts to the proper place in the city org chart. Are you in? Yeah. All right, good. So speaking of arts and parks, I want to say that it's really amazing to be here at Multnomah Arts Center. Do you know this is the 50th year of the Multnomah Arts Center? And now I'm curious, how many of you have been here before? All right, that's good. How many of you have taken a class here? Now I'm really going to get micro. How many people have done the weaving in the looms? Anyone? They're so beautiful though, right? Have you seen them? How about the pottery class? I want to take those. All right, good. This is a wonderful asset that the city's had for over 50 years. And in fact, Parks is the #1 delivery of arts programming in our city, and a lot of people don't realize that. In fact, one of our goals is to make sure, ever since I've had this job for 3 years now, I've always noticed there's silos no matter what. Whether it's in the homeless arena and housing, it's also in the arts. And it doesn't mean that that's always bad, but it's good if the right and the left hand know they exist in the same city and that they're working together and coordinating. So tonight I'm really pleased to see that we have some people here from Prosper Portland, which does arts programming, of course Parks, the arts office, and even in Peabot we have arts programming, I hear. So it's a matter of us figuring out how all those assets can come together so we can have a greater impact. And that's part of the journey we're on to organize our city better. To get us started, I'm going to ask you to connect with your neighbor. This is going to be an opportunity for you to get to know someone here. Now, if you came with one person and they're sitting right next to you, but there's someone else next to you that you don't know, you're going to talk to the person you don't know, right? Because it's about getting out of the house and actually connecting with people. But before you do that, I love that Stephen and Aubrey are already like getting to know the people behind them. All right, you're ahead of yourself. 1 second. So I'm going to demonstrate for you like what I'd like you to talk about. So think back to your earliest memory of participating in the arts. And if you can't think of one where you participated, like you were doing flamenco dancing, for example, think of your first arts event you attended. The earliest memory. And then think how it made you feel. Like, what did it do to you? Probably the reason you can remember it is because it did something to you. So my first was, it was a summer when I turned 4, because I think those are my earliest memories. And we were living in where Alameda meets Irvington, part of Northeast Portland. And I remember my mom took me, when I'm pretty sure she's deceased, so I can't fact check this, to Peninsula Park, and I took a tap dancing class. And the main reason I remember it is because Mom like said, look, you have new shoes. And I thought they were kind of cool because they made, you know, a noise. And then I had a lovely time in this dance class. And then when I went home, I happened to be the youngest of 8 and I have 6 older brothers. And so they tried to tease me about the fact that I took a tap dancing class. And it didn't work. I just wanted to take more. And it made me really have a sense that arts was always going to be a part of my life. And I'm sure that many people here have stories like that. So take a minute. You get 1 minute each way, right? So you're going to talk for a minute, and then we're going to switch. And I'll be up here telling you to switch. Go. Did it go out? Okay, 10 seconds. 5 seconds. And if you can wrap up your sentence you're in at the moment. I love this. They really like talking to each other. All right. I love that you're all enjoying your conversations. And now I want you to end them. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. If you can hear me, clap 2 times. If you can hear me, clap 2 times. All right, that's all right. You can hear me, that's good. I'm so glad you all got into that. That was great to watch from up here. This is about engagement, and I'm a real big believer that when you do engagement, there's 2 things you don't do. You don't show up with a blank slate. That happens in Portland sometimes. And then we want to keep meeting and meeting and meeting and meeting, and it takes a while. But I also don't like it, when, especially in government, when you go out with everything baked. So we're somewhere in the middle. We have some really good drafts tonight. Some great thinking went into it. But I can tell you that this is our 4th talk, and each one we get some really good nuggets, and we'll be editing as we go along. So thank you for being a part of the building of the arts ecosystem in the way that public money will be invested in the arts in our area. I'm going to give you just a few goals that we have and also a few facts. One of the goals is that the percentage of money going out into the arts ecosystem will increase going into next year. That's the percentage that currently is going out will increase next year. 2, I mentioned this earlier, the silos will be, I think, better aligned and better coordinated going forward, because we must figure that out. And that's already begun. 3, you will leave with clarity about timelines for the request for proposals. You'll hear a little bit more about that. Yes, we're making some decisions that were necessary, and it doesn't mean that the investments will stop going out. It doesn't mean that the granting will conclude. There's a very healthy transition taking place with how we're working with RAC, and you also can know that RAC is open to apply, and we don't want to ever get rid of the capacity that's been built, especially with the relationships with emerging artists and in public art, for example. So we look forward to continuing to reach out and work with RAC as they evolve as an organization. You will leave with some clarity about the monuments. And I'll start with one. This just in. We'll call them by their first names. Abe, George, Teddy, you know who they are? Well, they're basically in the waiting room of like the Monument Hospital to get repaired. And then by the end of February, we'll have a decision on timelines going forward. And tonight in one of the breakout sessions, there'll be a monuments conversation, so your feedback will be wanted during that time period. Now I'm going to pivot to just the importance of arts beyond just what it does for your soul. It's really a big deal when it comes to the economy. And I don't know how many of you had that pleasure. A few of you I recognize from being out anywhere at Lake Oswego last Monday night, and there was a great presentation on the impact of the arts on our economy. And they specifically focused on the nonprofit sector. So these numbers don't include all the music venues that are such a big part of Portland's ecosystem. And we have a lot of feedback that we need to be more inclusive of our entrepreneurs on the profit side of the arts. My point is, just within the nonprofit sector, in the state of Oregon, $9.1 billion, or 3.6 of our state's gross state product, is generated from the arts economy. And this accounts for 65,549 jobs. So when people say art is food for the soul, well, it's also food for the table. And I'm sure many of you out there already know this, but it's just good to remember that arts is such a driver. It's the kindling, if you will, for an economy to get started is the arts. And there's also this other thing that was fascinating at that report, personal creation. So people's engagement with the arts as makers, as creators during the pandemic went up astronomically. And they think this is quite a wild underreport. But 37% of those surveyed said for the first time in years, for the first time in their life with some of them, they used the opportunity to be holed up at home to actually engage with the arts. And I think that's a really beautiful story that says that arts was very primal in terms of survival during a really difficult time. During that same period of time, this is sad, 73%, very high percent, of our arts organizations lost value during that same pandemic, where people were really needing the arts. So when I think about that, and I'm sure you're thinking about that too, it just makes sense that we need to give back. We need to give back to that which allowed us to survive during a really difficult time. So I think we're in a perfect moment in time to really focus on the arts. Our city obviously needs to come back to life in general. We need more activation. We need that type of healing. We need people to get out of the COVID, I call it COVID selfishness, actually, where people have just been so into their own inner world and being on the internet way too much and thinking that's real. And there's nothing like the arts that gets you out of that funk, where you're out connecting again with people. I mean, the way you were all interacting with each other was really beautiful earlier. So we really want arts to be obviously a real motivator of our economy, but also we're really clear that it's good for our city's soul and our city's self-esteem, because we all know we need more joy in Portland and on our streets. So I'm going to get out of the way now because I want us to get to that engagement. We're going to start off with an amazing panel, and they're going to go over the big picture items. When you're listening to the granting, to the education work that's going on, to the monument work, listen with interest in what small group you want to be a part of. And we'll have 2 for the grantings, and then we'll have 1 for education and 1 for the monuments. But I'm going to be a sponge. I'm going to be floating around, listening. I'll be in the back of the room watching all the lovely nonverbal, and then I'll be back at the end to give a close and to say some of the things that I picked up on and some of the themes from the previous 3 arts talks that are also bringing us to where we are today. And with that, I'm turning it over to Jed. Jed, help me. All right.
All right, let's give it up for Commissioner Ryan. Thank you so much. Fantastic advocate for the arts. Great insights. Really appreciate that. All right, so before we dive into the presentation part of the evening tonight, we just want to kind of get a little pulse check on who is here in the room tonight. For those of you online, you can just do this all by yourself. All right, so if you are an individual artist, performer, musician, raise your hand. Individual artist, performer, musician. Yep. All right, good. That's great, great. You represent an arts or cultural organization. Ooh, look at that. That's awesome. You represent local government. Oh, yeah. All right, good job, guys. You had access to arts education in school. Oh, man, almost everybody. That's great. You are a lover of the arts. Okay, that's an easy one. Anyone not like the arts here? Raise your hand. Okay, no, you're in the wrong spot. All right, so a lot of talent and passion in the room. Thanks, you all, for being here. And now we'd like to turn to our panelists. So if our panelists could come on up here, and we will introduce them here in just a second. I think you guys have your mics there, correct? All right. So we will start, we'll go left to right. I'm going to have all the panelists introduce themselves, and then we will get to the presentation for the evening. So we will start with Charity Montez. There, yeah.
Oh, I'm on the left.
Yeah. My
Hi,
left,
friend.
you're right.
Hi, my name is Charity Montez. I use she and they pronouns, and I am a program coordinator for the City Arts Program. A lot of the work that I'm the newest member of the team, and a lot of the work that I will be doing will be helping to break down those silos between bureaus and offices. Commissioner Ryan was talking about silos earlier, so a lot of cross-bureau work with all of the bureaus that do work around the arts, which is more than you imagine. So, thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Hawthorne. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the City Arts Program Manager. Many of you know me from my previous position. I was at the Regional Arts and Culture Council for 17 years, and I'll be speaking more in a bit, so I'll just go ahead and pass it on to Darian.
Will this work? Oh, yep. Hi, everybody. My name is Darian Jones. I use he, they pronouns. I'm the Senior Policy Director for Arts, Culture, and Equity for Commissioner Ryan. And I have the lovely privilege of working alongside all of these folks in council offices to bring forward the arts work.
Hello, I'm Dawn Isaacs, she, her, and I'm the Arts Education Coordinator for the City of Portland. My role is connected to the Arts Education and Access Fund, which is created through the arts tax that we all pay. And my role is around supporting the 6 school districts that are served by the fund. Those 6 school districts are all within the geographical boundaries of Portland and use the fund to hire K-5 arts teachers.
Hi everyone, I'm Sue Pack. I oversee arts and culture programs here as a part of Portland Parks and Recreation. As noted earlier, we do have very robust arts programming at parks. So that includes the glorious Multnomah Arts Center here, Community Music Center in Southeast, Interstate Firehouse Cultural Center in North, as well as free outdoor cultural programs as a part of Summer Free for All. So that includes movies, concerts, cultural festivals, all free, as well as dedicated arts and culture programs in East Portland at Gateway Discovery Park. Additionally, we also have started doing some programs related to space grants, artist residencies, and grant funding. And we also do arts programming out in the community at community organization sites, largely on the east side.
All right, great. We now know who the panel is. We know who our audience is. So now we are ready for our presentation. So when you RSVP'd for this event, we received lots of questions, as we've done, this is our 4th one, and one of the most frequently asked questions we received in advance was, what is the city's plan to invest in the arts and manage arts funding now that the RACC contract is expiring? And to answer that question, we are now gonna turn it over to Jeff Hawthorne.
Great. So thank you for submitting those questions in advance. And we know that a lot of you have had relationship with RAC over the years. Maybe you've received a grant or a commission as an individual artist or as a leader of an arts organization. And so you have lots of questions about this decision of having the city let that contract expire this year. So we're going to talk about why and when and how that is happening. But first, to ground us all, we thought it would be helpful to share some foundational information about how the city currently funds the arts, including its relationship with RAC. So this chart shows some of the money in the city's arts and culture ecosystem that directly relates to our work in the City Arts Program. It does not include the investments in other bureaus, like Sue was just talking about with Parks and Rec. That's not included in this slide. But this $16 million in this chart does include 3 sources of funding that I want to share just a little bit about how much funding it is and what it is used for. Starting from the bottom, that smaller orange circle, an average of $1.3 million a year for the last 3 years has been generated by the Percent for Art ordinance. Many of you know that when there's a publicly funded capital construction project in the city of Portland, 2% of that budget must be set aside for the creation and the maintenance of public art. And that's how we get not only the sculptures on our sidewalks, but many of the beautiful exterior murals and other integrated artworks, as well as paintings and drawings and photographs that hang inside the walls of public buildings. So that's the Percent for Art program. The money generated by the Percent for Art ordinance must be used for that purpose and that purpose only. The next largest circle represents $4.7 million from the general fund. This has been an investment that the city has made for over 30 years that currently is used as follows. A little over 50% of that is currently being spent on program management and administrative costs at RAC and at the City of Portland combined. And as you'll hear us talking about throughout this presentation, that's something we want to reduce our spending on, spend less money on that. But that's what's currently happening, which leaves $1.7 million as grants for artists and arts organizations, and a new pot of money, currently $500,000 that we're using at the City Arts Program for strategic initiatives. And a couple examples of strategic initiatives currently underway are the monuments conversation that we'll be talking about tonight. How do we feel about the monuments that were toppled and the future of monuments, and how can we bring more representation into the public art collection? Another example is the cultural planning process. This is a regional process to create a new and exciting vision for arts and culture and to develop some goals and strategies that we hope City Council will adopt to really support this very important part of our community. And then the largest circle, $10 million a year net from the Arts Education and Access Fund after the city covers its collection costs. I think many of you know that of this figure, about $7 million comes right off the top and goes directly to the school districts to hire the art and music teachers that Don was talking about. And that leaves $2.8 million to supplement these other grants that you see in the general fund. Those funds are combined and awarded as grants for artists and arts organizations. And then we have a little bit of money from the Arts Education Fund to fund the coordination work that Don is doing. So that's the current structure. That's where the money comes from. That's a bit of where it goes to. And now to some of the change that's underway. And to ground us in what is the reason for this change, Commissioner Ryan and City Council have made it clear that we want to reduce the amount of money that we spend on program management and administrative expenses so that we can increase the amount of investment in direct grants to artists and arts organizations and other strategic initiatives. There will be some new strategic initiatives identified in this cultural planning process that is now underway. A draft of that report will be available for community feedback in January, and we hope to adopt the plan later in the spring. So we're wanting to have some money to invest in the recommendations that come out of that plan. This slide is about how we're going to do it. So of that $16 million, and you know those funding sources do fluctuate a little bit every year, but if we had the same amount of money next year, this is what we would do, is spend $1 million less on program management and administration and reapportion that money, $500,000 into these strategic initiatives, some of which are yet to be determined, and $500,000 more in grants for artists and arts organizations. So however much money we have to work with next year, the commitment remains the same for a greater percentage of the overall budget to go to artists and arts organizations. And then just to reiterate the other items on this slide, because the funding sources are restricted, you won't really see any changes in what the arts tax funds, the arts education coordination piece, or public art. So now to talk a little bit more about how that's going to happen, I will turn it over to my colleague Charity.
Thanks, Jeff. So how are we going to make this happen? Some of the way that the city plans to reorganize this is by bringing some services in-house. As Jeff mentioned, we already do the arts education coordination. That's something that we brought in-house this fiscal year, and that's the work that my colleague Dawn is doing. We are also considering bringing in general operating support grants and bringing the grants administration for that in-house in this next fiscal year because we believe that the city can deliver some services more effectively and efficiently. We are also looking at issuing requests for proposals, also known as RFPs. We're looking at this next fiscal year, which starts July 1, 2024, an RFP for a small grants program, which is usually grants ranging from 1 million, whew, just increase that, woo, $1,000 to $5,000 for artists and arts organizations. And we're also looking at additional RFPs that may be used for public art functions, including the collections management and maintenance. And then, as Jeff mentioned, that cultural plan, we're really anticipating that that's going to outline strategic initiatives that we're going to want to move forward. It's likely we will want partners and service providers to partner with us on that. So we will likely issue additional RFPs or an RFPQ to look at potential partners for those. One piece that I'm not sure if it's been said already tonight is that RAC may apply and be awarded any of those contracts. So we would encourage RAC to apply for any of those RFPs. Finally, we anticipate, how are we going to make that change? It decreasing what goes out in program administration costs, and we anticipate limiting those administration expenses. So limiting the amount that a service provider can spend on program management and administration, and our standard administrative fee would be 20%. And then for folks that were already milling around the room, you've already seen this graphic. This is our timeline for this transition. We are in November, so at the beginning here. We will be issuing that first request for proposals in December. We anticipate proposals will be due in February, and we would hope to announce the new service providers in April, and those service providers would be teed up to start providing services July 1, 2024. An important piece to note is that RAC still has a contract with the city, and they are still delivering services, and they will continue doing that until June 30th, 2024. So if you already have a contract with RAC, or you anticipate, if you're still working with RAC, they will still be your point person through June 30th, 2024. And then RAC and the city will communicate with you about what that change is going to be and who's going to administer your grants going forward. And then our last slide, other strategies for supporting our arts and culture ecosystem. I think Commissioner Ryan mentioned this. We really want to look to collaborate with philanthropy and encourage public and private partnerships. The City Arts Program wants to advocate for more public funding in the arts and continue exploring dedicated funding mechanisms. And then we will continue to lead on strategic initiatives like our Creative Futures and the Portland Monuments Project. And then I'm just going to make a plug. If you did not go back at the registration table, we have information on both the Portland Monuments Project and our Creative Futures. There's a postcard with a QR code and how you can get engaged and have your voice heard in that process. And that's that. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff and Charity, for that presentation. And now we are going to be getting the mic set up. We are going to be opening it up to questions from the audience. Because we're live streaming this event, we are going to ask that people line up here at the mic and ask your questions there at the microphone. And also, as you're thinking of your questions, remember, we will be breaking out into small groups where we'll really be able to have some, like, if you've got some real detailed, specific, focused questions or commentary, you'll have another chance to talk to the people on the panel right here. So if you're gonna have a question, we would just ask that you try to make it as concise as possible so we can get as many people up there. But the mic's ready for anyone who would like to hop up first. There we go.
Hello, my name is Kate Mira, and I have two questions. One about the timeline with RAC, the timeline with the funding, why the gap in the summer rather than trying to shift things from the fall to be in the summer, so that there wasn't that gap there. And my other question is there any plan for allocating funds to the P5 venues and supporting union jobs? Thank you.
I'll start by saying any investments in P5 tend to come from another source. They wouldn't be drawn from this amount of funding that's available. And as many of you know, there's a big conversation headed towards City Council to decide what to do with the Keller Auditorium. And once that decision is made, or as that decision is being made, there's also going to have to be conversation about how to pay for it. So that's kind of a separate conversation that the city will have to identify resources to fund. The timeline piece, part of how I want to answer that, Charity may have some additional information, but there's usually, even currently at RAC, there's not a grant application during the summer. They usually begin accepting applications in the fall. So if this new contract starts on July 1st, that gives us a little time to strategize and organize with the new grants administrator, if there's a new grants administrator or several grants administrators, to be ready to have a grant application process again in the fall as per usual.
I would also say that all of this lines up with our current fiscal year, which goes from July 1 to June 30th, which does not align with the calendar year. And then I think sometimes there are artists may receive funds from RAC in the summer, and those are additional disbursements, and that's not included in our timeline. Y'all can just cue.
Yeah, just hop on up.
I have a question. I'm just curious if you have any information about other cities the same size and whether the arts funding here is, how it compares with other cities the same size. And another question is there any plan, or will this new structure enable there to be more money allocated toward the arts in general going forward, not just rearranging the same pieces of the puzzle?
Thank you for that question. We are benchmarking that right now through the cultural planning process, and these are some of the postcards back there if you'd like to learn more. But when that plan comes out, there will be some assessment of how Portland's funding compares to other cities, with the caveat that it's sometimes hard to compare apples to apples because this $16 million is different than the $4 million in parks, and some cities count that money all as one, and some are directly investing in their schools in other ways. But we will try to identify how the city of Portland stacks up when it comes to other cities that we're frankly competing with for creative talent, right? So then when we have that information, and we won't be surprised if we see that Portland isn't investing as much as many other cities, then our hope is that the cultural plan will become a foundation for advocacy so that the arts community and the community at large can begin to advocate for more funding over time.
Hello, Nick Fenster, Northwest Children's Theater and the Judy downtown. Kind of a multi-part question, but it's all related to the same thing, which is I'd heard Commissioner Ryan at the top mention a desire to find ways to increase the funding. I think that's the $1 million in savings from overhead that was mentioned. Is that the sole source of increase right now?
Yes, so that's just slicing the current pie differently.
There's no other identified source of increased funding at this time.
That's right.
So I guess my question is, I also heard sort of a aspirational goal to include other forms of arts that maybe have been excluded from the process, for profit music venues, for example, and I've been in some of those meetings as well. And savings aren't a guarantee, so my question would be, if those savings don't materialize, what are the, how are you planning? Just now the pie is getting sliced more ways than it was previously. And also, that savings seems to be predicated on the idea that you're going to see some savings in overhead. But with a 20% overhead, it seems like 20% of the current pool of funding is greater than the current overhead you're spending. So I'm just curious how that math works out.
Yeah, it's going to be less. 20% would be less than the current, if you're just looking at the general fund.
Is it 20% of the general fund or 20% of funds allocated?
20% of the general fund. That's the most flexible amount of money. The amount we can spend on administration and program expenses for the other two sources of funds are restricted, so we can't change those. So we're only talking about the general fund. There's a commitment not to thin the soup. If we want to serve more creatives, more types of artists that we haven't been able to fund in the past, that will require additional resources. We're starting that process by trying to save some money from program management and administrative expenses, but we don't want to award everybody less so that more people can get a little something. We have to figure out a way to grow the pie, not just slice it up into smaller pieces. Thanks, Nick.
Hello, my name's Tony Greiner, and I've got an in-the-weeds question. One of the handouts was about public support and public ideas for the arts. And under data sources, there was a section that said statistically valid public opinion survey, but it doesn't say how the people filling out that survey were recruited. Can you answer that? And I might have a follow-up question.
Yeah, thank you. So this gentleman is referring to some preliminary research that we released from the cultural planning process. So that's not the city's data, that's part of a regional cultural plan, and more information about that data will be shared in the weeks ahead. It's really just a snapshot. What I can tell you about that data is that there was both an open community survey that arts organizations and the city and other counties helped us promote, and anyone who wanted to participate in that survey was able to do so. But to make it statistically valid, there was also a methodology to call and reach by email people in the region that were statistically representative, including the demographics of the region. So that's what we mean when we say statistically valid survey.
Thank you. Thank you. It'd be great to include those details because
oh yes, the full report will talk about methodology all the way through.
Good. I've worked with governments in years, and I know a lot of people claim things are statistically valid that are not. So sharing the details is important. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Hi, Aubrey Russell, and I wanted to thank Commissioner Ryan for the getting the Portland Monuments Project defined and started, because that's a big effort and it's important. I was a little concerned minutes ago. I think I heard that in February there might be a timeline for moving forward. My understanding, based on some documents that were submitted in July by the arts program to City Council, was that February, pardon me, let me back up. I understood that I think you said that February would be when a timeline would be established. My understanding, based on these previous indications, was that February was when a recommendation would be made to City Council for their action, so that with regards to the 5 toppled monuments, there would be some earlier decision point for their restoration, and that decision point would arrive in February. So that I'm curious to hear a clarification of that point, you know, I'll leave it there.
I think this is on. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Aubrey. And yeah, Commissioner Ryan was right in saying that in February, the City Council will make a decision about the return of the monuments and if they should be returned and where they will go. After that decision's made, there'll also be a timeline for that to happen, because some of the monuments are being repaired right now. That's going through a process with RAC. There's 2 additional monuments that are still going to be going through that process of being repaired or moving forward, and the future of the rest of the monuments will also be decided on another timeline that will be presented to council in July. But in terms of repairing the 3 monuments that the commissioner talked about, that's already been initiated, and the decision about where and if and how those will be returned is what will be made in February, and then the timeline for that process will come out then. Thank you, Aubrey.
And great, we're actually at, this will be the end of the Q&A, hate to tell you. We're gonna be moving on to the small groups right about now. So thank you all for the excellent questions. I should have given people a heads up there before that happened. One more, you wanna do one more? Sure, yeah. No, we got that guy, oh, sorry, he was back there. Wait, no, it's the guy in the gray shirt. And remember, after this question, we will have plenty of time in the small groups to ask your questions. So.
Hi, I'm the guy in the gray shirt, Mort Bishop. Good to be here. I'm here because I'm concerned about the failure of democracy. And I'm here because my concern of the monuments that were taken down by a lawless mob And I would like to know how I and other citizens in Portland can contribute to a democratic process to influence our city council.
Thank you for the question and joining us. And I think your presence here tonight is one way to do that, and engaging on the dialogue about the monuments. I think many folks on City Council would like to see some action taken on the monuments that were taken away in 2020, and this process will finally have resolution soon. So coming here today, and I think if you're able to join the monuments breakout, it'll be led by our Chief of Staff, Kelly Torres, and Sue Pack here from Parks to help folks talk more in depth. But offering your voices today is really one of the ways to do that. And there's also a survey online that you can take to also talk more about the monuments, what you think should happen, when it should happen, and we'll also be collecting more information as we get to that February announcement. So thank you.
Great. Okay, now we'll be moving into breakout sessions. So we are going to now be ending the Q&A section. This will also be ending the live stream. So for folks watching at home, thank you so much. There'll be many more opportunities to engage with the City Arts Program, and thanks for taking time out of your evening to tune in. I'm casually pausing so they can stop it. All right, there we go. Now people aren't online anymore watching us, so we can break out the champagne.